Everybody, welcome back. And yes, by popular request, we're going to be having some chat one-on-one with some cheesecake. It's been almost a year since I've had it's been almost a year since I've had cheesecake. So we're going to be commenting on some of the comments and questions on one of my most popular videos, The Boys in 1979, which I did pretty much like a quick cut-up of footage of Randy Rhoads, Eddie Van Halen, and George Lynch of their live performances in 1979. In essence, since they all grew up in the same era, pretty much in the same LA surroundings, and they all got together and either headlined with each other or saw each other play interchangeably. George saw Eddie, Eddie saw George, and Randy saw Eddie, and so forth. I thought, let's go ahead and see what people out there, the people out there, because it's got a ton of views, are commenting on The Boys in 1979. Obviously, everyone has their preference. There's the George Lynch camp, which is me. There's the Eddie Van Halen camp, which is also me. And then there's the Randy Rhoads camp, which is me. You're like, Tony, how can you be part of all camps? That's not fair. Listen, bitch. Listen. I can be part of all camps because my first guitar hero was Ace Frehley. And Eddie Van Halen came out and blew everybody away. And I was 77, 78, 79, 80. And then Randy Rhoads in 1980, 81 with Ozzy Osbourne came out. And you're just watching Eddie or Randy Rhoads do things that Eddie wasn't doing or couldn't do, right? Because of the classically trained guitarist and background that Randy Rhoads had. Eddie couldn't do that. And obviously Randy could not play like Eddie, but they were totally unique in their own ways. And then on the other spectrum, we had George Lynch. Not as popular as Randy or Eddie, but they were all in the same, they were right there in 1979, 78, playing the same clubs. And George was doing his little thing. Obviously heavily influenced by Eddie Van Halen. Most guitar players, I believe, when they saw Van Halen, they dropped everything and tried to copy Eddie Van Halen, from the guitar, to the Marshalls, to the effects, to the hair, to the tone, to whatever Eddie was doing. They basically try to emulate, copy, rip off, steal from Eddie Van Halen. But now let's get back to the Randy Rhoads stuff, alright? Alright, now since I posted this, The Boys in 1979, several years ago, everybody came out of the woodworks in their own camps. A lot of people are mean to George Lynch, they're mean to Randy Rhoads, and they're disrespectful of Eddie Van Halen. And I just did it because I wanted to have a little video. That's not professionally done. If I redid it, I'll make it better. I thought about it, who knows. But the footage from 1979, how Van Halen catapulted, and became headliners in 77, 78. And Eddie Van Halen just took off. And then, like George Lynch stated, when Van Halen took off, everybody wanted to get signed. Everybody wanted to, get signed really fast and be as successful as Van Halen. Because in 1978, Randy and George were still playing the clubs. 1979, Randy and George are still playing the clubs, and Van Halen's touring the world. 1980, Randy Rhoads, or December of 79, 80, Randy Rhoads gets the call from Ozzy Osbourne, so now he's away from the little club scene. He's going to be with a major headliner in Ozzy Osbourne, so he has his start. You got guys like George Lynch thinking, oh man, I'm getting past, I need to, up my game. But I think George Lynch, different twists and turns to get to that point later. It took him around 83, 84 to get the success that Van Halen did in 78 and Randy Rhoads did in 1980, just the way it happens. Alright, let's go ahead and see what these people are saying. Tom Hathaway says, Eddie was way, way ahead of either Rhoads or Lynch. Just a fact. He had the best groove and the best dexterity. That's true. The best sound, most innovative. Putting him in the same group as the other two is silly. He was in his own group. The others are great and got better, but no one can touch Eddie then. Period. He says period. That was Tom Hathaway. No disrespect, obviously everybody knows, myself included, Eddie is king. He started it all, he's king. But you still have favorites. I've always preferred George Lynch over Eddie Van Halen. Just because the way he plays. Because he doesn't copy Eddie. Yeah, he borrows his techniques. Everyone does. But he has his own voice. When you hear George Lynch, you don't even think of Eddie Van Halen. That's what I'm saying. When you hear other people trying to copy Van Halen, then it's like, okay, you're a clone of Eddie Van Halen. Randy Rhoads sounded nothing like George or Eddie. But they borrowed certain tappings and tricks and whatnot. But Randy Rhoads sounded like Randy Rhoads, and George Lynch always sounds like George Lynch. That's why I prefer George Lynch, because he was just incredible. As was Eddie and Randy, but to me, I heard different things that George was doing that Eddie didn't do, couldn't do. And it goes, vice versa. Like, anybody could do things Eddie can't do. Paul Gilbert, and so on and so on. Now you're saying who's better. I'm not saying anyone's better. I'm just saying I prefer a guitar player better. Everyone knows Eddie's king, but I preferred George Lynch to Eddie. So that's just me. All right. Who else? Let's see. This is from Dean. Without question, Eddie Van Halen wins. Two guitarists no one sounds like were Eddie Van Halen and Hendrix. True. No one sounded like Jimi Hendrix back in the day. Just the sound dynamics that come from Eddie Van Halen's playing outmatches George Lynch and Randy Rhoads combined. Fact, not open for debate. Not just an opinion. Randy Rhoads did not influence Eddie Van Halen. True. Great, good point. George Lynch did not influence Eddie Van Halen. Totally true. Eddie Van Halen influenced both Randy Rhoads and George Lynch, and they still suck. And they still suck compared to Eddie Van Halen. Now see, now that's his opinion. To say Randy Rhoads sucked, this person's ignorant. I'm not saying his name, Mr. RC, and George Lynch does not suck. But they can hold their own with Eddie Van Halen. Not in 1979, no one can hold their own with Eddie in 1979, but when George Lynch was doing Into the Flyer in 1984, he can hold his own with Eddie Van Halen now. In 84, George Lynch was as good as Eddie, or surpassing Eddie Van Halen in 1984. Randy Rhoads, 1980-81, he was already equal with Eddie Van Halen. So it's just all opinion, But no, Randy didn't suck, and George didn't suck. And yes, they were both influenced by Eddie. Eddie never copied anybody, which makes him the king. There's no disputing that. But I'm just saying, the boys of 79, there's 3. Now there's only 1 left, and that's George Lynch. All right. The Clarences says, all 3 are amazing. The Clarences. Love the Clarences. Boran says, just my opinion, Lynch isn't in the same league as Rhoads and Eddie Van Halen. I appreciate that. That's his opinion. And, I'm sure he loves Eddie Van Halen. I love Eddie Van Halen too. I just prefer George Lynch. All right. Let's see, I can't pronounce your name, so just consider for a second amount of talent on display here and the impact they collectively had on the rock guitar world. F off. This person's telling me to F off just because I put Randy and George Lynch on the same league. I didn't put them in the same league. I'm saying this is what George Lynch was doing in 79. This is what Randy Rhoads was doing in 79. And this is what Eddie Van Halen was doing in 79. Eddie was way, way, way up here to the stratosphere. These 2 other guys are duking it out on the LA club scene, waiting to get up there. That was the point of the video. Eddie took off, Eddie invented it, and you had 2 guys all the same age. Randy Rhoads, Eddie Van Halen, and George Lynch, born in 1954, 55, and 56. There were 3 kids back then, all going to the same clubs, checking out each other. That was awesome. What else? What separated Eddie from George and Randy wasn't just his playing. In fact, their playing, their styles phrasing, set them apart from each other. Only a person who is tone deaf, idiot, can confuse the 3 guitarists. So this person, John, is calling me an idiot. Each one had their own unique way of playing, of course. And no one could copy it. I mean, you can 2-hand tap all you want, but you won't sound like Ed. True. Oh, and Vigo Brata. I corrected you there. Vigo Brata was a total Eddie Van Halen clone. All right, prove me wrong, prove me wrong. Let's see. His playing just isn't that one-dimensional. There's a lot more going on besides tapping. Anyway, what really sets Eddie apart from the others wasn't his playing. It was his sound. George says it best after he saw Van Halen. True. After he saw a Van Halen gig and goes home and plays till the sun comes up, wondering how can he get that sound. Yes, Eddie Van Halen had the best incredible tone. Every guitar player, Ted Nugent, Neil Schon, all the bands from the 70s and the 80s, they didn't know what the hell Eddie Van Halen was using, and they were trying to copy him. From effects, speakers, wirings, variacs, all that. They couldn't copy. It was in his fingers. But Eddie Van Halen had his little secrets. No one else had a tremolo bar that was non-Floyd Rhoads that could stay in tune. Eddie Van Halen invented that. His way. Totally different than Jeff Beck, because Jeff Beck could do the same thing. But he wasn't doing dive bombs like Eddie Van Halen. Let's see what else. But Carl says, Lynch, thank God he went to Dokken and not Ozzy. No offense, but Dokken with Lynch is perfection. See, this is a George Lynch man. No commenting on Randy Rhoads. No commenting on Eddie Van Halen, but that's a nice opinion. Let's see, Rand Al Thor. George had the worst hairdo. Come on, guy, find some style somewhere. So now he's commenting on George's hair. Well, true, George Lynch had a little short haircut. Randy Rhoads had long hair. Remember, Randy Rhoads' job was quite right. George Lynch was with the Exciter and the Boys, but he already had a family and he was driving a liquor truck. So he had to cut his hair for the liquor truck. So that's why he couldn't grow his hair long. That's why he thinks he lost the gig with Sharon Osbourne, because he showed up to the one of the auditions, did his little thing, but he didn't look the part. Here comes Jakey Lee with this awesome black, hair, like Craig Goldie. You gotta have the hair and the look, and you just fit the bill. And here's George Lynch with a little haircut. No, it doesn't work that way. Michael McDermott says, Eddie had the biggest advantage because he had the best rhythm section. Michael and Alex were the shit. Yes. Yes. Oh, Van Halen's awesome. Van Halen blows everybody away. Van Halen blows everybody away. Yeah, and no one can play rhythm like Eddie, and no one can play... Van Halen was just worlds apart from every other band. Let's have some more cake. Encouragement and Hope Ministries commented, I love George. I know Eddie and Randy just won and won A for sure. But George and the longevity and the innovation over the years. I mean, sometimes we limit George to just his Dokken and Lynch Mob days. But what has George Lynch done in the last decades alone makes him such an elite, iconic guitarist that never sat back on his laurels, but kept progressing like Jeff Beck. Love the guy and his work. This guy gets it. He's not knocking Randy Rhoads. Randy Rhoads died early. Eddie Van Halen wasn't doing much with Van Halen because they broke up, and every 3, 4, maybe 6 years, an album would come out of the blue. And here's George Lynch pumping out 1, 2, maybe 3 records a year, collaborating, writing, and always touring with Lynch Mob or some incarnation of Lynch Mob or other hookups with other musicians and so forth. He just loved playing, and his playing grew. Every recording of George Lynch, his playing has grown. So when you hear George Lynch, you don't think of Van Halen, you don't think of Randy Rhoads. That's why I love George Lynch. He progressed, and out of those 3, who knows what Randy would have done but for the plane crash. Who knows? He probably would have left, maybe formed his own band, maybe gave up heavy metal, got into classical teaching, orchestra, who knows? No one knows. But Randy, I'm sure, would still be playing, just like George Lynch would still be playing. And I think Eddie would still be playing, but he only played with Van Halen. You never saw Van Halen, Eddie do a lot of solo projects or collaborations. Alberto says, 3 great guitarists, but definitely George is the best. Eddie is second for his career, and third Randy, who perhaps could have been the best, but life did not leave him. So this person prefers George Lynch over the 3. Again, this video was not a competition to see who's better. I just wanted to point it out that all three in 1979, they all grew up pretty much in the same area. And then they were playing in the same local clubs until Van Halen got signed. And then it was game over. So while Van Halen was touring, exploding to the world, you still had bands like Quiet Riot and Exciter and the Boys, you know, trying to get signed in LA. They're playing the LA Strip, the Roxy, Gazaris or whatever. What else? The Roxy, the Gazera. I forget the other name. All the nightclubs of the 80s, the 70s rather, they were playing, trying to get signed until they got signed or discovered. Gene Simmons don't make it happen for Van Halen. It was Milton Berle's son. Milton Berle's son? I don't know what that is. Randy way more diatonic and melodic. George not as musical as Eddie or Randy, but much darker. Yeah, that's pretty accurate right there. That was from Scott. Randy was more diatonic and melodic. Yeah, because Eddie Van Halen was not melodic. He was flashy and awesome. George not as musical as Eddie. True, because remember, this is early Dokken. And Randy was much more, or George was not as musical as Eddie or as Randy, but much more darker. That's true. George Lynch was the flatted fifth, evil, in your face, and raw. To me, George Lynch exploded in 1984 with Tooth and Nail. So I would equate George Lynch equal to Randy and Eddie in 84. Or I took George Lynch in 1984 to equal what Randy was in 80-81. How's that? And it took George Lynch in 1984 to equal where Eddie was back in 78-79. Because George Lynch was flying in 1984. It took George Lynch all these years to perfect and hone his technique where he could blow away Eddie Van Halen in his sleep. I mean, so what do you think? What do you think? Look. What else? This is from John Morris, or Marcus. Randy had no intention of playing rock. He wanted classical from the beginning, no later. And yes, Eddie is flashy law, but Randy graduated his mother's music school, and when she gave him an electric guitar teacher, in a year the teacher told him, "This is more than I can teach this kid." So basically he's saying that Randy blows away Eddie Van Halen. To be honest, this is from William. To be honest, as far as influential, obviously Eddie initially, which was helped by Randy not being around long enough to really leave his mark. There's no wrong answer here, but in the end, before Eddie died, I was hearing Randy mentioned as an influence more than Eddie. Scott Hicks, long live King George, with the way he has continued to evolve musically, and the number of bands he has been a part of is something that Eddie never chose to do. Now that's interesting because Eddie, I'm sure everybody would have loved to have jammed, recorded, or play with Eddie, but he kept to himself. His brother was his best friend, and he was his drummer his entire career. So he just basically said, I'm playing my music, my band, my way, and he didn't collaborate. Maybe occasionally with Brian May and other people and so forth, but Eddie Van Halen was strictly, I'm playing by myself, with my family, my band. Randy Rhoads didn't have that opportunity. George Lynch plays with anybody. His rules, his way, and you can see every album, every song, George Lynch just gets better and better. I still prefer the early George Lynch I prefer the Dokken George Lynch over the Lynch Mob George Lynch, because the Lynch Mob George Lynch is an entirely different guitar player than the Dokken George Lynch. And Dokken George Lynch was, to me, like early Van Halen, where it's all flashy, in your face with these awesome licks. That was Dokken George Lynch. Whereas Lynch Mob was more darker, more structured, more technical, better phrasing in Lynch Mob. Like he was just in your face, fire, with Dokken. That's why when I play George Lynch, I'm strictly in the Dokken mindset. I rarely touch the Lynch Mob stuff. I like the Lynch Mob stuff. It's great. I grew up with the Dokken Lynch Mob, the Dokken George Lynch. And when I saw him play, I'm like, that's who I want to emulate. I heard Van Halen in his playing, but he took it into another level. So you never heard Van Halen and George Lynch. You saw the techniques that Eddie Van Halen had. But George Lynch's vibrato blew doors on everybody. Randy Rhoads didn't have a vibrato. Eddie Van Halen doesn't have a vibrato, but George Lynch did. So that's just, again, that's my opinion. Look. I invite all of you, if you can, go to my channel, click in playlist. You'll see it right there. It's called The Boys of 79. It's a short video, 27 minutes. There's no talking. Looking back, I could have made it better. Because, but long story short, I just basically compared the three guitar players, what they were doing, how they sounded, how they played in 1979. Clearly, Eddie was way above everybody else. That was the point of it. But I used that as a building block because that's the only footage I had of all three. I couldn't find 78 Van Halen footage. I couldn't find 78 Randy Rhoads footage, or 78 Lynch Mob, or George Lynch footage rather, or 77. The only footage the earliest of all three I could find together was 79. 79 Van Halen, 79 Quiet Riot, with 79 Exciter. So I'm like, that's it. And then that was like the catalyst, the beginning of what became 80s metal because of Van Halen, then Ozzy Osbourne, and then Dokken, and so on. People say, oh, I want you to add Warren DeMartini and Jake Lee. There's no footage out there. If there's footage of them back in 1980, I would make a video of it. There's no footage of Warren in 1980, 81, 82. There's no footage of Jake Lee in that era either. But there was footage of George Lynch that someone posted in 79. And there's Quiet Riot footage of 79. And there's Van Halen footage of 1979. I'm like, great, the boys of 79. And the fact that all of those three saw each other play or were on the same bill. George Lynch played with Van Halen. George Lynch played with Quiet Riot. So they saw each other. They knew who each other were. And that must have been awesome for these guys. Because remember, this is, Van Halen was born, George was born in 54. And like 4 or 5 months later, early 55, Eddie was born. And then in 56, Randy was born. So all within a year and a half apart. And these kids in their late teens, early 20s, they found their way playing in 3 different bands. And Eddie Van Halen just blew the doors on everybody. So that must have been exciting to be a kid in George's era, Van Halen's era. Rivalry, this is my go get the milk. Rivalry, while sometimes taken to extremes because of ego, is healthy for musicians because it pushes them to make the most of their talent by always striving to improve, expand the boundaries. Randy Rhoads and Eddie Van Halen, and you can put either name before the other. If you wish to take sides, but both were a couple of the most extraordinarily talented guitarists that ever played. Both are gone now, but their musical greatness will live on forever. No mention of George Lynch, but he's got a point. I mean, it's even more striking now, sadly. Eddie's gone, Randy's gone, and you got George Lynch still out there making music. He's what, 67 now. I guess he's going to play till he drops. Good for him, because if you think about it, I mean, you got the next generation, like the Steve Vais and the Joe Satrianis, but they're all in their late 50s, maybe early 60s, as far as these metal guitar players. All the other guitar players now are in their late 50s. You know, the Paul Gilberts. The neoclassical guitar players are all in their mid-late 50s. But the oldest one left is George Lynch, 67, 68 later. Next year will be 68. And he's still doing it. Not like he used to, but he can still teach you a lesson or two. He can still rip off your face. Let's see what else. It's not about technical wizardry. It's about invoking emotions from a higher power and having the listener feel it too. Edward had it. John Bonham had it. Jeff Porcaro had it. Danny Gatton had it. True. Lynch fans say there were 3 equals. Randy fans say it was rivalry of Randy and Eddie. Eddie fans say it was Eddie being king. All of them were brilliant. Eddie got good head. Oh, Eddie got a good head start and popularized him. Eddie, this guy can't type. Eddie got good head start and him popularizing super strat, tapping dive bombs. He was ahead of the pack. Yes, he was. Others were great, but didn't bring it as much to the table. No, because Eddie Van Halen invented all this stuff. And these comments go on and on. I just wanted to touch base with you and pick this one particular video because there's like a gazillion comments. And I'm trying to respond to all of them in some way, but you have a lot of people arguing back and forth. And it's nice dialogue because you got your preferences. I mean, and there's other guitar players, Jakey Lee, Vivian Campbell, Warren DeMartini, and that's for another video down the road. But for me, obviously Eddie started it all. And the next big name in the 80s heavy metal guitar playing was Randy Rhoads. But because they all played in the same circles before Van Halen got signed, you had the Boys, you had Quiet Riot, you had Exciter, and you had Van Halen before Van Halen got signed. They were all playing in clubs. And the fact that all 3 of them knew about each other and they watched each other, and Randy and George copied Eddie Van Halen, but Eddie Van Halen also took notes from George and Randy because they were right behind them. That's why I chose 1979. I can only find footage of all 3 at their earliest together was 1979. Recently in 1978 footage of Van Halen came out, but I didn't find any Randy Rhoads in 1978. Maybe like a little snippet, but nothing worth to make a video about. I didn't find anything from George Lynch before 1979, other than he was an Exciter. But here's live footage of the band, the Exciter, Quiet Riot, and Van Halen, all in 1979, and that was why I chose to call them the Boys of 1979, because they grew up in the same musical area playing clubs. So check it out. It's the Boys of 79. Again, join in on the conversation if you want to. It gets heated in there, but it's fun. It's nice because you have a lot of interesting comments, very knowledgeable comments, a lot of stupid comments, some name callings. I don't care if it comes from me. I didn't say that. I'm just basically saying, here's 3. What's your take? And people have their own camps. I like them all. I've enjoyed them all. But my camp is always George Lynch. But Eddie was king. That's just the way it is. Alright, I'm Tony. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, leave them below. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll probably divide this video into 2 separate videos. But if you like more videos like this, where we just kick back and hang out, let me know. I'll be happy to make more videos like this, where we just talk and hang.